Okay, so just like to welcome everyone. This is a session to do with how the ITC, TMC go about developing a TAP, and we're going to use a particular example that we're working on at the moment for that. And to help us with the presentation for this particular group, we have Sam Ellis from JOST, who's our TAP leader in this instance. We have Nemanja Militek from SAF Holland. We have Jason Button from CHS Broadbent. And we have Paul Walsh from Busy Technics, and myself as the chair, and I'm working for the ATA ITC working group as the safety representative for the group. So through the ATA, and in particular through the ITC section of the ATA, we identify issues that need to be given attention, and we give some guidance for solutions for that through the TAP process. The TAP itself, or the need for a TAP, is something that would be identified through the ATA's General Council forum, if you like, or it can be something that is developed through a need that the ATA ITC members have seen, recognised, and come up and presented as something that needs to be done. So then when there's a consensus on that, we can put that forward as saying, yes, we will produce a TAP to do that. And part of the process to do the TAP is that we want to have a small working group to work through that particular issue. And the idea for that, I guess, is that we've found in past dealings and so on, that by having a group of 6 or 7 people, that's a large enough and as well as small enough group to be manageable to cover off on the technical aspects and pulling together of the information that we need to develop the app itself. When we go up and do actually produce the app, then there's a bit of a process. Obviously, that's what we're going to be going through during the course of this session. And then ultimately the documents or the information that we have there would be put on the ATA's website. There's a tab there normally under the resource library that you can click on. There's a little pop-down menu there, and you'll be able to select there for technical advisory procedures, and that'll give you a listing of the particular TAPs that are there. Okay, so as I say, we'd like to now just outline some of the process that we go through with the current TAP that we are working on. Then there'll be the opportunity for people that view the session and so on to make comments and ask us questions, which we'll be able to address at the end of the end of TMC. All right, so I'll perhaps just give a bit more of an outline of what we had here with this particular TAP, how this one came about for drawbars. That related to several years ago, there was quite a nasty accident up in the northeastern Victorian area that resulted in breakaway of a trailer, and that led to facilitation of this sort of a TAP to identify that we've got a problem there in the industry perhaps, and we want to find a better solution of how that could be handled. All right, so I'll hand over at the moment now to Sam, the TAP leader, to go into a little bit more detail on that. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Yeah, look, I guess one thing that I wouldn't mind taking everyone through is just, I guess, a little bit of an idea of how we work as a group and how the I guess build a little bit about on the idea of how a need for a particular TAP came together, and then I'll talk a little bit about the group constellation and how it comes together, and and then explain a little bit of the progress that we're making as well. So you've already mentioned, Ian, that the seed for this particular need for a tap came out of a tragic incident in northeastern Victoria a few years ago, and I guess that's something which we've built on. From there, it was understood. Well, I guess let me take a step back. With that incident, and it wasn't necessarily an isolated case as well. There have been other high risk near misses and a number of cases where drawbar trailers have run away. Unfortunately, well, I should say fortunately, many of those have not resulted in death or injury. But it's always a concern when a trailer, a heavy vehicle is out of control, and so when a trailer breaks away, that's something that's definitely unsafe, and it's definitely something that we as members of the heavy vehicle industry are very keen to make sure doesn't happen. So the national regulator, the NHVR, when this Northern Victorian incident occurred, they took up the case, and they put together a guideline which became VSG4, and that covers the inspection of drawbar eyes. Now, the incident in northern Victoria that resulted in loss of life, the root cause was a drawbar eye separating from the drawbar, and so the VSG4 issued by the NHVR addresses that particular incident. There's really good information in that VSG, and I guess though around that whole notion of maintenance and design of drawbars, it was felt within a number of people within the ATA that it's not just the drawbar eye, and then there's a broader number of issues that are going on which need to be addressed more thoroughly. And that's where I guess the impetus came from from members of the ATA in order to make that guideline more specific, clearer, and broader to cover all aspects of drawbar safety. And so the work that we're doing in our group is to look at all aspects relating to drawbar safety, which includes maintenance, inspection. It includes also installation and other, not just around the drawbar eye, but around the from tip to tail, and also looking at the SUSI coils. And I'll go a little bit more into that in just a moment. The group itself comprises of the wonderful gentlemen that are on the screen at the moment, and I guess we represent a broad section of the industry. So we've got suppliers, we've got engineering services, we've got operators, we've got members of the ATA. We've also got input from the regulator as well. So although they're not a sitting member in the group, we've definitely got access to their input, their experience, their opinions, and their expertise. And so the group of people on the screen are the key working team of this TAP group, but we're certainly not the sum total of all the knowledge and experience that's flowing into this particular document. As Ian mentioned before, it's a fairly small group, but that's deliberately designed that way, because the experience of many of us has been that if you get a large group, you end up having to juggle a lot of opinions, and the discussions go on and on and on. So we need to make sure that this happens in a timely manner and gets done quickly. And so having a concise group of key people working together to focus on particular topics allows us to get things done quickly. And as I said before, it's keeping the group small doesn't limit the amount of input and the experience and knowledge that comes into the TAP. It just means that the people who are sitting and discussing and making decisions on the content is much more efficient. In terms of process, the work that we do, we meet monthly via Zoom, which is a great efficiency tool. It means that once upon a time we might try and travel around the country and come together, and that's always difficult to get everyone's agendas to align. But at the moment with Zoom, we only really have to find a couple of hours once a month, and we can come together face to face, as it were. The work that we do is then taken to the ITC and gets put before the committee. So it's not just the opinions of the people on the screen as part of this TAP. It's something which is vetted by experts in industry as part of on the council. So everyone can be assured that when the document is finished and published, it's a well-considered and well-rounded document. We're looking at a number of different aspects, as I mentioned. We're looking at SUSI coils, which is something which may not be immediately recognised as part of the drawbar system, but it is the brake connector, and a number of issues when a trailer separates from the truck, the SUSI coils and the brake lines. The brake lines are, pardon me. The thing which effectively stopped the trailer when it separates. Now, there have been some cases where SUSI coils fitted to a trailer just stretch and allow the trailer to the trailer brakes to remain off and the trailer to continue rolling. In a worst case scenario, the SUSI coils can actually stretch and neck and seal themselves off, which means that the brakes never actually get applied once the trailer has been separated. And there's been some incidences recently in Melbourne of that happening. So it's a real issue, and it's one that we are looking to give some clear guidelines on, that SUSI coils should not be included in a drawbar design. We also look at the installation of drawbar systems, tow eyes and mounting to the chassis, because there are a number of high-profile designs which are perhaps not in alignment with the manufacturer's guidelines, that is the manufacturer of those components on the drawbar. So we'd like to help clarify the design requirements for installation of drawbar systems. And when it comes to maintenance, as I said before, VSG4 has some really good information in it, but we'd like to be a little bit more detailed, I suppose, on how to identify fatigue cracking, where to look, what to look for. And then when it comes to the welds, what proper welding methods are, and what proper welding, how repairs can be carried out correctly, as well as when it's necessary to conduct a repair, for example, on a drawbar that may have been bent, how much bent is okay, or when is bent absolutely not okay. So these are some things which we want to remove people's sort of, this is how we've always done it kind of approach, and we'd like to give some clear expert best practice guidelines in the TAP. We've got a deadline to work to. We're working to publish this or have it published in April next year, that's 2021. And to do that, as I said, we're meeting monthly, and reporting to the ITC. And as a small group, we've been able to work quite efficiently already. So we've had 2 meetings so far, face-to-face, since we began in September. And already we've got all of the content drafted, and we're now in that process of refining and editing that content. And that's where the bulk of the work will be, because we need to make sure that this document is tailored to the audience, that it's going to be easily understood, it's going to be widely understood, it's going to be readily referenced. And so we need to make sure that the content and the tone of that document is right. And so that review process is probably going to take us a few iterations, but as I said before, with the group that we have, we'll be able to get through that fairly efficiently, I think. That's it for me. I think I've probably taken up way too much time, but anyway, thank you.
Good, Sam. Thank you very much. We might then pass through to Nemanja. So Nemanja product specialists and suppliers side of the project as such. So over to you, Nemanja, please.
Thank you, Ian. I would like to say that technical advisory procedures, as the name says, are advisory. They have advisory role, and they are not legally obligatory. Their use is voluntary, and they are guides only. So the main purpose and idea behind the technical advisory procedures is to improve and manage safety. Operators can decide if they would like to use a part of the procedure, whole procedure for their application, but they still must comply with ADRs, that they are law. Advisory procedures are developed mostly on request by ATA, General Council, or they could be initiated by consensus of ITC members on ITC meetings. As I said, the law is ADR, and also working on this particular procedure, we had to be compliant with ADRs, most compliant on ADR 62 and the relevant standards that ADR refers to. So it's not just standards related to particular connection between vehicles. We also had to refer to welding standards, to VSBs. Even in some cases when we couldn't, let's say, get clear instruction from ADR, we moved and actually explore the other standards from overseas, like European Regulation 55, and we had to go through all 100 and odd pages of that regulation. So to say, technical advisory procedures could be found on, as Ian said, on ATA website in resource library. And so far, many subjects were addressed with those steps. So I would suggest you to go there and you will find a lot of interesting topics. Pretty much that's about general applicability and the use of technical advisory procedures. Thank you, Ian.
Okay, thanks for that then, Nemanja. And I'll just touch on a little bit at the moment, as we've mentioned already, that it's the TAPs are a guidance material for people. And people might say, well, why have the guidance material? We just got to bear in mind that the standards and the ADRs that we're using as well in our industry, they take a lot of time to change, whereas something like a TAP is something that can be written relatively quickly, sort of 12 months-ish sort of a period, and can be made use of by industry quite quickly. All right. So now just we'll pass over to Jason to discuss a little bit more on the next sort of aspects to do with the TAP that we're working on.
Thanks. So as an operator, and a maintenance department, what we're trying to get across to people is firstly just general maintenance. We don't want our staff and operators and everyone sifting through roadworthy manuals and books and everything. We just want to develop a basic procedure for people to follow for basic maintenance and safety of a drawbar. So in all this, we've touched on it. We want to make sure we use the right couplings, we use the right tooling to measure the bushings. We want to make sure that we're using the right air lines, and we want people in the workshop and in the industry to understand what a crack is, what a bend is, and what we should do about it. So that's what we're trying to develop into this TAP. Then we've gone into it. We've spoken about SUSI calls. So SUSI calls, as we know, don't work on a drawbar system. So we want people to understand to use a good quality air brake rubber hose. We want to understand to use the correct procedure of fitting a hose clamp, which sounds really silly, but a lot of people over tighten a hose clamp and it doesn't seal and the hose comes off. We want to make sure people are using the correct couplings to coupling the air lines to the drawbar. So that's some of the things we've touched on. Then it gets down to checking bushes and moving forward to a driver for them to understand in their pre-starts what they're looking for, what they're identifying as a problem or a maintenance issue, how and should they report it and what they should do about it, and then what the workshop does to fix that problem. And then in this, we've touched on welding. We need to identify who is responsible to weld a crack, who is responsible to fit a new coupling if it's a weld-on coupling, or what we do. And then we've gone down the lines of even looking at bolt-on couplings, how we torque that nut, what we look for when it's fitted, the block that it's fitted to, it's okay. So we just want people to have a thorough understanding instead of sifting through manuals of what they need to do in a workshop sense and as an operator.
Okay, that's good then, Jason, as well. And we also did quite a bit of a review of the visibility of the drawbar side of things too that you mentioned.
So we did a few tests on the visibility and reflective tape on drawbars, and we worked that it does work in the industry, but on a drawbar, when the tape's on the angle, it doesn't really pick up in the headlights. So then we're looking into at the moment whether we tack on pieces of flat along the drawbar so that the visibility tape is on so that you're looking directly at it so the lights pick it up, because it is a good safety thing that cars, when it crosses through an intersection, they can actually see the truck go through, they see the drawbar because there's a gap naturally, and then the trailing unit following.
Okay, so that's good. So people, you'd be able to see already that we've got quite a cross section of people here looking at this aspect of the taps. So we're covering it from the operational practicality sort of side of things. So Jason's input there is invaluable to us, as well as what we have to cover in terms of the regulation sort of aspect of things. So there's quite a few aspects that we deal with when we're looking at a tap and what's involved there. Might just now we'll pass over to Paul to complete a bit more of the details of what we've been looking at there. Okay, Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Yeah, I guess just to add to what the other members have been saying, we just wanted to provide a bit of background to some of the content or the context of the content that's going into the maintenance side of drawbars and couplings. And I guess the first thing is that sitting behind the fitment of the supply of the equipment is ADR 62, which provides for minimum strength requirements for drawbars and also the various couplings associated with drawbars and other couplings for that matter. Some of those requirements involve physical testing. There's fatigue testing and also static testing in some cases. The fatigue testing involves putting the equipment through 2 million cycles of application of forces to see whether the equipment can, I guess, stand up to the rigours of life in service. There's also, for some couplings and drawbars in particular, the option of doing calculations to demonstrate compliance. That typically involves finite element analysis. The various couplings, not so much the drawbars, but the couplings such as tow eyes and ring fetters and the like, ball couplings, all require markings which establish the minimum rating for those couplings to assist operators in choosing the right couplings for the application. Behind the content of the maintenance that we're including in the TAP, I guess, is some investigations over time, investigations of failures over time, whereby various pieces of equipment do fail or approach failure. And in investigating those sorts of events, we often see that there may have been signs of fatigue cracking leading up to the eventual failure. And I guess that sort of harks back to what Jason and Nemanja and I think also Sam was saying about the the importance of operators and workshops checking for evidence of fatigue cracking prior to a complete failure, which happens in some cases. One of the issues with inspections that we'll probably include in the TAP is the need for the equipment to be clean before inspections. It's very important that people doing the inspection can actually see what's happening. Inspections for fatigue cracking can be quite difficult, and so one of the important things is to make sure equipment is clean. So we hear probably many comments about operators who have clean equipment being in good shape, and it's only one sign, but it does help in the maintenance process. Just to complete the process, I think it's already been mentioned before, but once the TAP is drafted, we go through a number of reviews, I guess, and finally the ITC group has the final provision of input to the TAP before it then goes back to the ATA General Council for final ratification and then publication on the website, as others have mentioned today. So, yeah, we would certainly encourage people who are involved in ITC to get involved in the TAP process. It's very rewarding and a very efficient process. We haven't spent hours and hours on it. There is a bit of input, but a lot of it's I guess knowledge that the people already have, but it's good to be involved and see a final outcome, which hopefully will be of help to the industry. Thanks, Ian.
All right, that's good. Thank you, Paul, and thanks everyone. So just might go through a couple of other aspects that we have there. So just so that people would be aware, Sam mentioned early on in the piece about VSG4, and just to perhaps Sam make people aware where they can find the VSGs and so on. That's all public documents and the like.
Yeah, correct. So the NHVR website has an extensive library of documents, whether they're the VSG, the standard guides, or the VSB, which the standard bulletins. There's a really good source of information there, and because that's coming from the regulator, that is the bulletins are considered to be the if you like the practical standard, I suppose, that vehicles need to be need to meet, and the standard and the guides I guess help us as users or as operators to apply those standards. So yeah, definitely worth going to the regulator. Just doing a Google search of NHVR VSG4 will probably take you directly to the document.
Okay, thanks, Sam. And then maybe, Jason, we've found while we're doing this TAP, of course, there's quite a few different things in terms of finding out about roadworthiness and interpretations for different inspectors, whether it's a maintenance inspector or the like. Maybe you could share some of the things you're finding there with the interpretation.
Yeah. Across the board, that's amazing across the board is the difference in what inspectors look for and what the laws are. And when you shift into, like, even in Victoria, into the roadworthiness, there's not a lot of regard in there whatsoever towards what the law is on roadworthiness of a drawbar. So it's interesting what the inspectors do when you can't find the information in the roadworthy guidelines. So as a working group to organise this TAP, that's why we want to try and put as much information we can in there for operators and maintenance staff and everyone to be able to at least have a basic item to go to sort of sift through, and they can read down a line and get the relevant information very quickly as to what we should do as an industry.
All right, that's good. We've mentioned a little bit too, Paul, certainly about the maintenance and the presentation of your equipment, not only for your own people to be able to check it, but also if you are pulled over to have vehicles inspected. But part of this tap is, of course, to be able to give outlines for maintenance people, operators, even the inspectors of things that they can be looking for and what's generally required to make sure that your equipment is good and serviceable. So I guess maybe a little bit just there on the format of the tap itself when it's published. Just to go through, as I say, to the ATA's website, and there'll be a couple of links there to be able to get you through the resource material to the taps. So there generally will be a concise document that is presented there. Usually we try and include, and you'll have a look at some of the other taps that are already posted, quite a few images of things to be looking at. The idea of the taps is, as we've all mentioned, is to make something that's fairly clear and easy for people to understand, so that it's a good usable, or they're good usable working documents to help people with the safety aspects in particular of the industry that we're working in. So as I say, encourage you to have a look at taps that are already being posted, and certainly to get involved through the ATA and in particular through the ITC if you have a particular interest in some aspect where you think that something's lacking in the industry, that maybe that can be brought in to become something that may be needed as part of a tap. As an example, some of the things that in the past have been looked at, we've looked at brake boosters, slack adjusters, wheel attachments. There's some others there. I think about the tipper code as well. There's quite a few aspects that we have taps already published there through the ATA and through the ITC. All right, so that's good. Thanks everyone for their participation in that, and there'll be opportunity for people that are viewing the presentation, of course, to ask questions in the comments section of the link with the TMC pack that they will have, and then we as a group will come back to the people to post replies to those comments, and as I say, to encourage people to be involved in the industry and what's needed in terms of future taps by all means. All right, thank you.